Hello everybody, welcome to another speedrun against Alipor 37, rated 1236. We were supposed to play the Sicilian. Shucks. I went into the Pierts automatically. Uh, okay. Well, it's not a Kalashnikov, but I'll play c5 now and try to, I don't know, transpose into a Sicilian. There's c5, there's d6. So I'm playing some type of Sicilian. Delayed Sicilian, there you go. And they always put their bishop on c4, which allows us to take control over the light squares in the center with the simple e6, blunting the bishop, protecting the king. So, not the Kalashnikov, but we'll say it's in the Sicilian tree. Okay, so he breaks, and let's take the central pawn with a flank pawn, which is almost always beneficial. He recaptures with the knight. There's no particular threat. Let's just develop our piece towards the square we know we want it. Towards the center, challenge his knight. If he takes, we're happy to take with the b pawn as it puts another pawn in affecting the center, towards the center. In the extended center, these squares. So he takes, and we're, like I said, we're more than happy to support d5. I already like black's position, and he retreats the bishop before we gain a tempo on it with one of our pawns. That makes some sense. There is a drawback to it. One of the drawbacks is that we have a developing move bishop a6, which gets it outside of all of our pawns, and he can't castle or put something in the way unless he retreats the knight backwards, which would hang the central pawn. So he can't castle, and we develop. Great move, right? So he moves the bishop again, but it does come with a threat. However, it's easily parryable, and we could do it with a developing move. Queen c7. Why not queen b6, which is a little more active? Well, kind of runs into bishop developing move, and that doesn't make any sense. So he does retreat the knight so he can castle, but I thought that hangs a central pawn. So let's take the central pawn. I don't see a good move for him that would refute this. Okay, so he just castles, but I think a central pawn is certainly a win condition. So now if we zoom out, we have what we need to win the game. So if it came down to king and pawn endgame, we just win. So now we know we can trade everything in a favorable way. Our knight's kind of loose. You could play d5. You could go knight c5, hitting the bishop. You know, let's pick up the bishop. It is a bishop pair. We can always play d5 when we feel like it, and there's nothing he could do to avoid this. Okay, so now when we take his bishop, we also mess up his structure. However, maybe you don't have to take it immediately, as it's not going anywhere. So I'm going to play bishop e7. The idea is to plant it on f6, opposing the diagonal, and just building up my position little by little. I could also even block the diagonal e5 pawn push instead of d5. I can remain flexible with these pawns. I could push however, it's favorable for me. So he moves the rook, which unpins the knight, which means that maybe he can move the knight and defend the bishop in a better way. So I'm just going to take it now and ruin the pawn structure when he has to retake with the pawn. And now, because he didn't fianchetto yet, I don't want to just castle. I do want to get this to the diagonal first with a threat. Now he can't fianchetto, he has to first move the rook. And then I get the turn back. So he does. I can create immediate threats, hitting pawns with the bishop, but I have my win condition. I just want a castle. Okay, so now he fianchettos. Because we got there first, we don't have to ruin our pawn structure with g takes f, whereas if he was there first and then we challenged him, he could take and ruin our pawn structure, which I would still play. But now it's even better for us since we don't have to. So I'm going to take his bishop, up my pawn win condition, and he has to put his rook here, which he may or may not want it here, to be determined. So now we have one open file. We can easily throw a rook here. That makes sense. Let's do that. I'm still staying flexible with my central pawns as I'm not entirely sure which one I want where. So he lifts his rook so that if I take, he can try to fix his pawn structure. However, I have the free improving move that is favorable for me in all the permutations because it hits his weak pawn behind it, and you don't want to lose your rook for the bishop. And my rook's also pressuring the b file with a replacement rook to follow. His rooks are not connected, and now you can see one of the reasons you should connect your rooks. It's to replace them easily, swiftly. So he moves the pawn, but that takes an entire turn. An a3 isn't exactly making huge progress in his position, right? So we get to go again. So this pawn is hit by the queen. So we can either push the pawn so we don't have to defend it. You can stick the bishop here, which would be great if he didn't have a c pawn to challenge it one day. That would just be super cool. But we also have infiltration, which makes a lot of sense. I guess we want to go queen a5. Maybe we should just take care of this pawn. Let's just push it so it's get rid of the weakness. And it happens to defend a loose bishop that is on an outpost. That can't be kicked by the knight because it's too diagonal, which means it takes 4 moves to touch this square. Plus bishop would just move. So he makes something that just ensures he doesn't get back rank mated, but this gives us another turn. And although you would want to fix your pawn structure, your potentially backward c pawn, it's not necessarily a priority right now. The good thing is it does stop a central knight jump, which I like, but queen a5, it looks even more active. So, as does infiltration with the rook. So I'm going to go with queen a5, trying to improve my most powerful piece, which should provide a little better gains than just something like c5, trying to fix my structure. He does jump in. What does this threaten? Just the pawn and the fork on the square. Okay, queen takes pawn, defends the square, also removes the queen from the fork in the future. So we can kick the knight next, and the knight has no good forward squares. So although c5 you could have played it before preventing this, I think queen taking the pawn and playing c5 next is just as good or better. I think I said c4, I meant c5. So he moves his queen. I don't see anything on my king. He's just defending this. But this is a little loose. And now we dislodge the knight from the center and fix our structure with tempo. Now we're up 2 pawns. We have a more active queen, a bit more active rook, and a more active minor piece. So instead of just being up +2, the evaluation should be more than +2 because we're up material and the compensation. We have and the better position. So he just retreats the knight. So what was the point of all of that, right? Now we get to take this pawn, and this bishop is locked in like I wanted. He has no pawns to challenge it, so it sits here beautifully covering the c5 pawn, which is undefended. So he could easily take this, which I like. And And this doesn't do anything because the bishop is secure, so you could just move your queen anywhere. Although maybe not anywhere because, oh no, this actually pins the rook, so he can't back rank checkmate you because it's pinned to the king. That's funny. Okay, so he just moves a pawn. I mean, we love to see that. That can't be the right move, right? So now, infiltration on the 7th should be the most effective thing. How does he defend the f2 square? If he goes here, we take it. So this looks deadly. And he might resign, or if he's the type to play on, well, he may not even see the real threat right now. Like, he may not understand it's actual game over yet, so let's see what he does. Although, I mean, he probably notices he needs to defend f2. He probably notices there's only one move that does it. Maybe he moves the king, or maybe he just sacks the rook, takes with the queen as a new defender, and just accepts the losing position. I imagine that. One of those three. King move, give up the rook anyway, or resigns. Because if he just plays a5, I swear, I'm gonna I'm gonna hack his computer and disable all chess functions from it, so he can't play anymore. Or he plays a5, and I'm gonna install what's that game? Minesweeper. Actually, that's pretty hard. What's an easy game? Tic tac toe. So he does move the king, so we get one of the three. But now we still get the checkmate threat. However, now he can defend it without the bishop taking it immediately. The downside of that is the rook also pins along with the queen. So do we have anything with the knight hanging? He could take the rook. That's true. But you could throw in this. That way the bishop defends it. The only thing is when he goes here, he is threatening back rank. So you do have to spend another turn. But that's not the end of the world. We could also just make that move right now. Since he can't move any of his pieces, there's also rook b3, funny move. I mean, everything's winning. I'm just going to make some room for my king. Which pawn, though? I imagine since the queen is on the long diagonal and the knight could use the g5 square, that's two reasons to push this pawn as a luft. Because if you push the g pawn, the queen covers your escape, although it would be the one giving check, so potentially that wouldn't matter. However, this does take away a square from the knight. And now we have the forcing rook a2, queen takes knight. I mean, depending on what he does, he can defend the knight and things, so we have to see. But we're up 4 pawns. Obviously, the position is completely winning. I hope you guys can see that. And I want you guys to be confident that you would win this game with such dominance, right? Doubled on the 7th. He's purely defensive. Queen can't move. Bishop on the best outpost in the world. I mean, it's not the best because it's not targeting stuff, but it's just really cool. I guess we should transfer it at some point to e4, which would be even a much more effective diagonal. So he moves his pawn a5, which he didn't do it last turn, right? He moved his king. Okay, and I said if he did it then I'd be really upset. So he could do it now, since I'm not actually threatening checkmate in 2 or in 1. Okay, so we could do anything. That's the good news. I guess let's just get on with it. Since all of his pieces are paralyzed and his favorite thing to do is push the a pawn, let's just put the bishop on e4, where it's, I mean, I love the c4 square because it looks so cool and it covers the c pawn, but realistically, at this point in the game, it's not touching anything. So let's put it to this diagonal where it not only threatens to win the knight, but also the pawn behind it because the queen, the rook is defending, so we want to take with the lesser value piece, which is a bishop. And he has nothing to do. He just has random pawn moves. If he moves the rook, he gets checkmated in one. The queen is helping defend the rook in the position. So it's not fun. He doesn't have any moves. And so I'm expecting a6 or random queen move. I'd go for the random queen move because it at least adds some activity. And there you go. Random queen move. Oops. Doesn't actually threaten anything. So, I mean, yeah, this is defended even. So I'm just going to continue with my plan. Now all of my pieces are optimally placed. I can't really do anything else other than play c4. And my position is pretty much perfect at this point, like maximized. I guess, like I said, I could play c4, I could play a6, and then it's maximized. But those moves aren't necessary. These three pieces are already killing it. They're maximized. I'm threatening bishop takes knight. I'm threatening bishop takes pawn. So presumably knight's going to go here. If it goes here, I suppose the queen can't take it because of the rook, but g5 and you lose the knight. So I imagine knight e1 if he finds it to defend this a third time. And there, okay, he defended a third time this way. But this shouldn't work, right? Not only can I take the knight with the queen, but I could take the knight with the bishop. And they both work. They both win a knight. If I take the queen and he takes this way, that's the only way that doesn't work. I guess I'll just take it here. Do I want my rook here or here? I guess the difference is where I want my rook. But if I take here, and he takes here, and I take here, yeah, I don't want my rook that close. So let me take with the queen. That way I could keep my rook away from attacking. I don't want his king to be able to come here and attack two things at once. So let me keep a distance, since it's a sniper piece anyway. And I'm already up 7 points of material. A bishop and 4 pawns. I'm also up on the clock. He moves his king. But the problem is the bishop is x-raying as well as the queen, similar to the way it was with the rook. And this is a checkmate. So his best bet was to trade the queens. But I can imagine why he missed this, because pins are kind of a big tactical blind spot. These types of pins at these ratings, one of the most common things they miss all the time is something like this. So let's go through the game. Hopefully we didn't do anything egregious. No mistakes, no blunders, 96. Just 2 inaccuracies, so we'll take it. So I accidentally played d6. My head was going towards Pierce, but then when I looked to a little layout that says the openings, Kalashnikov, Scotch, QGD, I saw Sicilian and I'm like, whoops. So, but I kind of transposed, right? We're still in the database. This has been played. We're still in Masters database. This has been played. So even though it was a weird move order, fine. So center, development, development, center. This move is center, development, center, development, and restriction. Taking a central pawn with a flank pawn is an advantage, positional advantage, as the central pawns are the strongest in the middle game. So if you have more of them, that's a little bit better for you. It's a big part of the Sicilian. Now development, center, force move, center, development, and restriction. They're saying his best move is queen f3. Ah, did they want him to long castle? That's interesting. That's the only reason I could think why they would bring the queen out first, because I'm stopping castling the other way. Although we have an open b file, I wouldn't necessarily mind it. That would have been interesting, actually, a real interesting game. But it's not, I don't know if that's usual. I don't really play the Sicilian, so anyway, development, center, already. So from this point on, Black's just gets a lot better. So it starts at minus zero point 0.4 here, and he makes this mistake hanging the central pawn, which I said was a big mistake, and it goes to minus 1.8. So just completely losing, 2 pawns worth down for white. Even though we're only up a pawn, we have a whole nother pawn worth positionally, so just losing for him. Minus 2.5 with the most natural move, castling. So you see, you can't even play this. You have to be engine-like to play it with white. So was this the best move, or was d5? They don't even list it? What? So this was the best move, but why they don't list d5? It allows knight d4. They want you to long castle there? Okay, forget this. I'm not even looking. Okay. So we played the best move. That's crazy though, that d5, it just goes from minus 2.4 to minus 1. It's a huge difference. I guess it just moves the same piece twice and creates weaknesses, and it's not even under attack. Like it's so well defended that why am I gaining this central space maybe? They want me to just develop. I gotta remember this. Not this move, this concept. That's really interesting. So anyway, he protects the bishop and we just develop in king safety. Now free stuff, because this pawn structure is a positional advantage, potentially a win condition in an endgame, because they're terrible. Improving a piece for free. King safety and development. Okay, let's say force move so we don't ruin our structure. You see, you can even play e5 and stay flexible, and that dominates the knight. It also blunts the rook, which is already blunted, so it seems more oriented towards the knight, which would then have this route, but then potentially d6, which then you then push after. You could these pawns are so fluid. You could do whatever you want with them. It's not critical. So anyway, we just develop a rook. Makes the most sense. Improving a piece for free. Force move. Our position looks amazing. Now they list it. That's so weird. But now the position is different. There's a lot less pieces on the board. There's a lot less of improvements and things you need to develop. Plus, they're even saying among that is the queen a5 move and the making Luftroom move. Okay, so now we play it, and now apparently is a better time to play it. So we kind of followed the right timing, which is nice. Now we improve a piece for free with threats. Free stuff and defense because we were in a fork. Improving our position, removing a weakness for free. No longer have a backwards pawn. And then free stuff, improving a piece for free. Or just improving a piece with free stuff. He makes this ridiculous pawn move and even the engine hates it. As we improve a piece for free. Free stuff. And now just making room for our king, improving our position so we can commence attack. Improving our piece with a clear idea in mind. Continuing our clear idea at -8. Free stuff. He's supposed to trade queens to save himself from the mating attack that I have, but he walks into mate in 1 instead. So essentially, perfect game from black in whatever you want to call this. Started as a peer, ended up in a Sicilian-ish structure. But yeah, the moral of the story is, well, two things. I wouldn't take here and bring the black's b pawn into the center. That's a bad idea. And also, don't retreat your knight and hang your central pawn, because that's the same thing as throwing the game entirely. So, and Lichess database says Sicilian defense, Sozin attack, Leonhard variation. So there you go. Submit your rapid games in my Discord. Goodbye.